Hi, I'm Joe and welcome to the channel. This Inspired By series video is brought to you by the fine folks of America. I was sitting down and listening a lot to their older music and I really thought to myself, why don't we make an Inspired By video based on folk rock? And that's exactly what this is. If you're not familiar with this series, what I like to do is write an original piece of music, either inspired by an artist or a genre of music, and then I teach you a little bit about some of the techniques that make up that style of music in hopes that you can incorporate it in your own playing. Let's go ahead and jump into the track, and then I'll break everything down for you. So before I break this song down for you, let me just share a little about this genre of music. Obviously, folk rock is centered basically around folk music where they're telling a story. And the chord progressions aren't that complex, but you'll notice that the chords they use are a little bit jazzier. The major mighty seventh will make an appearance in here, and it just adds a little different color and flavor than your traditional triad chords or your basic chords. And speaking of flavor, if you'll notice, when you hear these songs, the music is obviously supporting the words and the story that it's telling. And so lots of times there's different sections in the song, or different flavors or scenes, I'll call them. Even in this song, you'll notice that I try to set things up with little tension. And then resolve to the one chord, where you sit on it for a little bit, but this is a new scene. And then goes into another scene. So try to incorporate that in your own music. When obviously you're writing a song and you're listening to the lyrics, try to make sure that the music matches that. But you can be creative and set up different scenes before you get into each section of your song. So this song basically has two guitar parts to it. And what you'll notice again is that the major seventh and the minor seventh chords are making a big appearance here. Here's the difference. I'm going to play the intro, but with normal standard open chords or normal minor and major chords. So it'll be a G to an F minor to an E minor. So the intro would sound like this. Now there's nothing wrong with that, but you can jazz things up a little bit by substituting out for your major chords a major 7 chord. And for your minor 7, or your minor chords, you can make a minor 7. And how do you find these notes? Well, basically you just count up the scale and add a 7th degree. So in this case here, for the G chord, I know a G chord is made up of G, B, and D, which is the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. I can now add a 7th to that by counting up. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp. If I add an F sharp to this chord, it's now a major 7. For the minor 7, it's kind of easy when you're playing a bar chord like this, because all you have to do is lift up your pinky and expose the 7th underneath that. And for the E minor 7, I just add a D on top. And here's something a little tricky with this. I notice a lot of times in these songs that the rhythms aren't necessarily straightforward. They're pushing things along. So you'll notice here we're basically going to play on the 1, 2, and 3, and 4 to land on the last chord. So there's a little bit of playing on the upbeat kind of like reggae, if you will, but these are more like punches or stabs, I would call them. And then resolving to a D major. So the second scene is set up basically with this D major chord. And all we're doing is a typical folk move where we're moving around the top voice, the top note. So it's really an F sharp here. And then opening it up, lifting it up for the E. And then coming down for the sus4, G here, and back down to the F sharp. So it's basically kind of, again, just having a little bit of upper melody happening on this chord. It adds a little bit of movement to your chords, so if you're staying on one chord for a while, you can just jazz things up a little bit by just moving around one of the voices. And then the next section basically is doing the same type of thing, where we're going to be a 2-chord vamp between the G major 7 over to the D major 7. Now you'll notice for this time, I'm not playing the G major 7 this way. I'm actually playing it this way. I'm bringing my thumb over to bar, get that low G. I'm having my open D happening, and then I have these top fingers happening, where it's just basically I'm playing the B, D, and the 7th, the F sharp, on the high E string. And I'm using my thumb strategically here. I'm muting the A string. So when I strum, you're only hearing those notes, which is the notes of the chord. And for the D major 7, here's your D. All you have to do is take your root and go down a half step to get that major 7. Well, you can just bar your first finger across the 2nd fret. And I'm hitting the open D string with that. So why? Why would I play the chord this way instead of this way? Well, if you listen closely, if you hear this shape, there's really not any open strings ringing out. And so what I really wanted was to get that sound of this open D happening, because it almost is a common tone. Well, it is a common tone going down to the next chord, which is the D major 7. And you'll also notice, for me, I'm doing less of a hand move. Like, this is a lot of work. Just go from this shape to this shape. I gotta lift everything up. Well, if I'm right here, all I have to do is lift up these fingers and put my first finger flat. It'll take some getting used to playing it this way, but it's kind of a nice little chord. And then you get that open D happening. And after you play that, we're going to cycle through to the F minor 7 again, to an E minor 7. Same thing. And then we go right back into that intro setup. And this little D vamp ends the song. So that's really it for guitar part 1, but all the different scenes for guitar part 1. The second guitar part just adds a little bit of color on top of the chords that are already happening. And it's happening over this section where we're playing the G major 7 to the D major 7. And what I'm doing is I'm basically playing a G chord up here. The shape will look very familiar to you. This is like your D shape. And this is nice because it's a movable chord shape, because this note is the root for this, D. So if I just take this whole shape up, I now know, since I'm on a G here, that this is a G major chord. And I'm not playing the low D like you would for a D chord. I'm just playing up on these top 3 strings. And I'm doing a little bit of an interesting move. Again, I'm trying to add a little tension and color to these chords. So I'm going to basically play a G major triad, slide it up to an A major triad, and back down over that first G major 7. It's just a really fast slide move. And then when I get to the D major 7, I'm going to play a D chord this way, which should look a little bit kind of familiar. It's coming basically out of this bar shape here, but I'm basically just playing the top 3 strings, but with that open D. So it's the same D chord. You'll notice that you can basically play inversions of chord all over the neck. So all I'm doing is I'm kind of utilizing that. And I'm walking down from a D to a E minor, but with the open D still, to the D, this shape. So it just adds, again, a little bit of motion and color over the chords that are happening. So again, over the major 7, and then over the D major 7, and that's it. Those are the complete guitar parts for all the different scenes in this folk rock song. Well, that's another Inspired By video down. Hey, if you have an idea for what you might like to see in this series, please do me a favor and leave me a comment down below. And while you're down there, will you do me a favor? I'm really trying to grow the channel. Would you help me out by subscribing down below, hitting the like button, and knocking the bell? All those things really do help me out, and I'm so grateful as always for your support. As always, I wish you a great day.